Welcome to Stage Explorations, where we interview the theater creatives and artists from the theater world, those who perform on stage that the audience sees, and those behind the theater stage that the audience almost never sees. I am a journalist and theater fan, Buell Brown, and today's guest is...
Hi, my name is Octavio Solis. I'm the author of Quixote Nuevo. If you want to know more about this play, please listen to this conversation right here.
So my first question is, when did you fall in love with theater, and why did you have to be part of the theater world?
I was stage bit in high school very early on. At the beginning of my sophomore year, I had intended to take an art class because I'd resolved that maybe I was an artist of some sort. I seemed to be drawn to that. And all those electives, arts, drawing, all literary magazine, all these arty electives in high school were all already taken up by the time I applied. So all I had left was drama, and I did not want to be there. Didn't want to go, but I did, and I showed up, and my drama instructor had us read Midsummer Night's Dream aloud, and took it like almost a passage at a time. Everyone reading like 3-4 lines or a speech, etc., going up and down. And I just remember everyone struggling so much with the language. And I looked at it and I said, this isn't that hard. I know how this is supposed to sound. I know how to pronounce these words. I think I do. And but everyone else was struggling mightily with that language. So when it got to my turn, I was at the back of the row. I started reading aloud, and I could just feel her just lean over like this to see who's that that's reading now. And I could sense that she was looking at me. Immediately after class, she asked me to audition for the school production of Diary of Anne Frank. And I said, I don't think it's for me. She says, no, please come. We're having auditions today. And I went, oh, all right. So after school, I went home. I just completely ignored that. And I said, nah, that's not for me. I don't want to lose my afternoons. I enjoy my afternoons watching TV and going outside and playing and all that. And the next day she said, you better come. We're having callbacks. We missed you. So you better come. So again, I said I would, but I didn't. I went home. And then the third day, she said, we're having final callbacks. And if you don't come, I'm going to fail you in this class. So I said, oh, God, I guess I better go. So I went and auditioned, and I got the part of Peter Van Daan in Diary of Anne Frank. And it was completely not what I expected. It was amazing. The very sit-down read-through was just remarkable. I could not believe how transformative that experience was, how they made the gym in which we were reading completely disappear and transport us through language, through their acting, right to Amsterdam in some hidden loft up there. And these young Mexican kids were now Jewish, just like that, Jewish family in hiding. And I was among them. So I just said, I want to try this. And once I got into it, I just never looked back. I loved it. I fell in love with it. Fell in love with the craft. I fell in love with theater. And I found my tribe, so to speak. And so I pursued it all through high school, pursued it as a major all through college, and then pursued it as a study all through grad school, but with the focus being on acting. I was interested in other things, directing, and I kind of took a casual interest. No, I got a deep interest in play analysis because I thought, and I took some playwriting courses because I thought if I'm going to be a good actor, I should know how a playwright's thinking and be able to anticipate some of the issues and some of the approaches and styles, etc. So it was purely just in support of my craft as an actor. But I guess that what I was quietly doing is training myself as a playwright too. And once I got out in the world, I became a writer more than an actor. I couldn't get an acting career going at all. But people were very interested in my writing and directing, so that's what I started doing.
To add on to that, when did you actually fall on writing? Meaning, when did it go from an interest to an obsession that you had to write for theater? When did that become an obsession?
I think playwriting for me became an obsession when I finally found a theater company in Dallas that asked me to write about my culture. I hadn't been steered in that direction. I didn't know there were plays about my culture. I thought it was all Arthur Miller, Sam Shepard, David Mamet, Beth Henley. I thought it was the Brits and the Germans, Brecht and Pinter and Edward Bond, who, I love all those guys, but I never thought that there was anything that I could say or that anyone could say about people of my culture, of my background. And so when a theater company asked me to write a play for them, it was called Teatro Dallas. They commissioned me to write a play about a Chicano family or a Chicano character, a kind of Chicano version of Don Juan. They wanted me to tell a Don Juan story in Dallas, set in Dallas, and set it during Day of the Dead, which is, a Mexican holiday. And they had a Mexican director and they had Mexican actors, Latino actors that I could use, that I could have use of. And I didn't even know there was anyone else that looked like me in theater. I didn't know there were other writers. And the whole idea of Luis Valdez wasn't ever brought up in my education. All 7 years, none of it never came up. There was never any emphasis on that, or even as just a passing interest or a semester's course in any of that at all. So I was flabbergasted and very delighted. And the show went very well. I wrote him a play called Man of the Flesh. They had the original world premiere of that. It was the first time I'd ever been commissioned to write a play. I was paid $1,000 for that. It went very well. And then I sent it to SER, or someone did actually. I didn't do it, but somebody using my name and filling out a form sent it to South Coast Rep, and it was accepted. And so I came out of the blue. I had to go out there and work on this play. And eventually South Coast Rep also produced it. And because I did so much revision on the work, I really felt like I had to call it another world premiere. So we called it a world premiere for them too. And that launched my my relationship with South Coast Rep and my career as a playwright with a background and an emphasis on Latino work. And so I felt like I knew I had to do that. That became my obsession. But also, I'd still tried to be an actor all during that whole time, and when I was in Dallas. And when I was working on Man of the Flesh, I was so into it. I started getting really into it that I started resenting in the afternoons when my agent would call and say, "You have an audition. You got to go right now." Da da da. And I'd have to go to these auditions, and it felt like I was being interrupted. And one time I was really annoyed when they sent me on one, and I went over there and I looked at the side, and it was for a course commercial, 2 or 3 sentences or maybe even words. I don't remember. And I said, I'll nail this. This will be easy. I'll get this Spanish language course commercial. But then I turned around and saw 30 other people, 30 other guys that looked like me, except they were handsomer and buffer. And they were looking at that text like it was fucking Shakespeare. They were just so wrapped up in it. And here I was treating it like it was like an annoyance, a gnat, and that I thought, glibly, I'll get this, but my heart wasn't in it. And at that point, I said, I can't be an actor anymore. They can have it. They clearly want it more than I do. They deserve it more than I do. But I will write plays for these guys from now on. For people that look like me, I'll write plays for them from now on. And because they deserve that too. Because I wasn't seeing plays for me, and I wasn't getting cast in those parts because I looked Mexican. I wasn't getting cast in Chekhov plays. I wasn't getting cast in Shakespeare. We just weren't. And that was in the 80s. So So I said, things have to change. And I've been part of that change. I'm very proud to have been part of it over the last 30, 40 years, or, to be part of that.
It's a generic question, but I think it's an important question. Theater experience. Why is it such a unique format? Yes, you have TV and movies, but why is it a unique format both for the actor and for the audience?
I think what separates theater and theater actors from the boys is that it's a live experience. You can't stop and say, "Oh, can I do another take?" You are on and you're on and you're on till the show closes, till the curtain comes down or the lights fade out or the audience leaves. Um, and being part of the live experience means you have to be in contact. You have to really feel the audience presence. You can't not feel them. They are there, and they change the performance. In a movie, I can get up and go to the bathroom 3 times during a movie, and the movie doesn't care. Al Pacino up there doesn't care. He doesn't know. The theater could be empty, and the performance never changes. It's the same if it's one person or 1,000 people in that room watching that movie. In the theater, it changes. If someone gets up in the middle of the show to go to the bathroom, boy, those actors sense it. They sense it, they feel it, and it changes the performance. The audience has a direct effect on every performance, and that means that every performance, even if they never get a line wrong and every word and every gesture is directed exactly the same, doesn't matter. Every performance is different in a live experience because it's the art of accidents, and there are accidents that happen all the time. Somebody slightly goes up on one line and it just changes how that other person reacts, and automatically that changes it. Actors can show up tired, they can show up sick, perform ill. Audiences can show up drunk, or just really tired. It's often the performance after opening night is often the one that is considered the slow one, really slow, because everyone works up to this high. But I like to go to the performance after opening because that's when I hear the language purely. That's when I hear the actors with their guard lowered and they're not pumped up and performing for the audience. They're just being there for themselves and getting through it. So their guard is all lowered, and it's a different kind of performance. And I actually love it more. I'd rather go to that than to openings. But that's the chief difference, is that you can stop and get the performance perfect every time. When you're working on a film or TV thing, you have multiple takes to take it from. You can even improve an actor's performance depending on the point of view. If he's got like a really strange look on his face, just cut to the other guy. And you can still have the line there, but you're looking at the other person. I've been in an editing room where they've actually improved an actor's performance. In the theater, you're out there, you're exposed, you have nothing. You can't hide behind furniture. You can't say stop and let me try that line again. You do that in rehearsal. That's what rehearsal's for. But once it's live, it's live. That's why I think theater. That's why I've stayed with theater. I've never gone to film or TV. I have no interest in doing that. I love film and TV. I'm a student of film, and it's an influence on me in theater. But I love it in the same way that I love literature, and I love poetry, and I love art. It's just another thing. But I am a creature of the theater. And that's what I do.
Why are the words and the imagination most important?
It's not the words that are the most important in the theater production. It's the thought and the deed. The words are only the vessel that carry them forward. But it does mean that the thought has to be really explored, really plumbed. We have to really hone the thought completely down. And once you've honed the thought, the words come. and a character can be lying, and it can be expressed beautifully too, if the lie is well thought out, the reason behind the lie, and the deed as well. The deed is, I mean, theater is about action. It's about action. It's about forward momentum of action. A character does something that sets something in motion. That's where we start the story. It's also, the action is also the very core it's what gets at the core of theater, which is ritual. Theater is ritual, and the reason theater likes poetry is that it's a heightened language. So we use a heightened language in the theater because in ritual you use heightened language. This is my body which I give unto you, do this in remembrance of me. Things like that very high expressive heightened language is what is desired in the theater. So consequently, people talk funny in the theater. People talk funny in my plays. They express themselves in ways that they would never express themselves in real life. And I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not trying to do real life. Film can do real life if it wants to. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in sitcom reality, which is not a reality either. I'm interested in capturing that ideal thought and deed through language. So language is the reason I'm drawn to it for the theater is just because it's that heightened language. But I've also learned one thing, and that's that in my plays, I go from the sacred to the profane, sometimes within the same sentence. So my characters are extremely profane and will express themselves in very crude terms, and then elevate it to use also this incredibly heightened, poetic, lyrical language that is just short of song. And then at some point, they will go into song. I don't write musicals. I've only written one true musical with Adam Guan. It was called Cloudlands, that South Coast Rep produced very, very well, by the way, and was well reviewed. But I am not afraid to include music in a play that is a straight play, because sometimes the language gets so heightened that it just has to go into song, which is the highest form of language expression. Quixote Nuevo came from a commission. It came initially from a commission with the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. They wanted me to adapt Don Quixote, the novel by Cervantes. And I said yes. I mean, the money was too good. And the idea of having it done at the outdoor theater before an audience of 1,200 every night was just really just enticing. And then I also would like the challenge of trying to adapt that massive, huge novel, which even most Spaniards have never read, but everybody seems to know Don Quixote. And everybody seems to think it's the story of Man of La Mancha, which is a complete fallacy. Has nothing, that musical has nothing to do with the novel at all. It just has the character of Don Quixote in it, but it's not the story of the book at all. So I really went out to try to truly adapt that novel. Well, it's impossible. It's just it's a picaresque adventure that a character goes through, and every 2 pages is a different adventure. I mean, every 2 or 3 pages is a different adventure in an 800, almost 1,000-page book, actually. So it's like you can't include them all. So I had to start picking out, cherry picking the adventures that seemed like they'd be fun to stage, fun to see on the stage. It also has like 5 novellas in there of 60, 70, 80, like 20-page long stories within there that have nothing to do with Quixote. He isn't even in there. And then there's 2 books. It's book 1 and book 2, which are like almost completely different, but they're still Sancho Panza and Don Quixote in there. So anyway, it was an undertaking that I felt I successfully pulled off, and it went really well. But I felt like it was still I still didn't quite get it. I didn't get it, and I didn't understand what was missing from the book, from the play. I just didn't know what, but I just didn't. I thought I'm not going to let anyone else touch this because I'm not there. I have to rewrite this. Got to figure it out. And then Shakespeare Dallas in the Parks contacted me and said they wanted me to do it as well, but they said, can you set it modern day Texas, and can you add more Spanish to it? And I went, oh, well, there's a thought, and I did it. But I was lazy about it. I think I just took the play that I had just done and put some more Spanish, updated the language, updated the scenery to Texas border, and we produced it, and that went okay. It was all right. I still felt like I was missing something. I still felt I was getting closer, but not close enough. And it wasn't until Eric Ting at California Shakespeare Theater, or Cal Shakes, up here in East Bay of Berkeley and Orinda, that artistic director said, I want you to do this again. I want to produce this play, but I think you have work to do. And I says, yeah, so do I. What's missing? I feel like something's missing. And he said, you're missing. You're missing from this. You've been so loyal and true to Cervantes that now I want you to take this book away from him and make it yours. Take this story and make it yours. It's not you're missing from this story. I want to do an Octavio Solis play. I don't want to do a Cervantes adaptation. I want you to take it away and make it yours. And that's all I needed to hear. And we worked on it with my director, KJ Sanchez, and a great cast, and again had a lot of music in it, and we did it. We pulled it off. I don't know how. I wrote a completely new play, completely new, and set it really close to home. I felt like the first one I was in Spain, the second one I was at least in Texas, the third one I was home. I was writing about me. I was writing about my culture in a deep and profound way that really spoke to me, dealt with issues that I was very concerned about. I've always thought that Quixote wasn't just this crazy quixotic hero, some guy who likes to fantasize about knights and all that, and then did heroic things. I always thought that he was suffering from dementia, that he was suffering from Alzheimer's or something like that. And my mother is going through that right now, and has been for a number of years. And she was very present in my consciousness when I was doing that, because I wondered when and if and when symptoms like that would show up in me. And I still have that apprehension because I believe the gene is carried through the mother. And so I worked on that. I made Quixote, my Quixote, be a scholar of Spain, who lives right along the Texas border, near around Big Bend area, up near El Paso, and he starts to as he starts to lose his memory, he starts to conflate his own life, his own past, with the events of his favorite novel that he's been a scholar of and knows extremely well, conflating those things together, which I think is probably what happens in Cervantes' novel too. I don't think anyone's ever interrogated it in that way, but I certainly did.
You already answered my next question. What was the main story arc? Which, do you feel like you covered that, or do you want to go more?
No, I think I think there are other story arcs that are involved in this. I mean, this is a man who at the end of his life, his sister and his niece are all really deeply concerned about him, because all he does is spend time with his books, and he hardly eats. He's forgetful. He goes into these episodes where he sees things just like someone with Alzheimer's, and and he knows that they're about to put him in hospice care in a senior facility where they can treat him and watch him and take care of him. And he does not want to go that. He wants to have one last fling, one last adventure, to resolve some things from his past that are haunting him. And before he loses his memory completely, he wants to revisit an event from his past that really shaped who he is and why he carries so much guilt in his hidden heart, and why he used Cervantes as a and Don Quixote as a method of study to kind of assuage himself with of that guilt. So he becomes his own, his literary hero for that time, and goes around Texas, around the southern area of Texas, which resembles a lot of La Mancha, very rocky terrain, where there's some sheep, sheep herders there, just like in the novel, and goats and stuff like that. Very rural, very isolated, and where I also can then address some important matters that I feel needed to be addressed, especially dealing with the undocumented. So there are some political issues that I address in through this play, and I felt it incumbent on me to try to do so, because I just got tired of when I was writing of the right trying to completely demonize immigrants who are coming over looking for, just a new start, a new life. And I thought, ooh, this could actually work. I could make it work, and I do. I feel like I'm doing it in a way that is thoughtful, that is also provocative, and so but fair. I think I'm also doing it in a fair way. So those are some of the concerns that I think that are present in the work as well. So it's not a work of whimsy. It's not there's it's a big visual feast, and it's an oral feast as well, and it's funny, but there are serious things afoot in there in this play, in this work, that I'm extremely proud of, and especially I'm extremely proud of the way in which this company has been able to marshal all those elements in the play into a real cohesive whole, and they all get it, and I'm very, very pleased with their work.
My next question is usually about themes. Do you think you're already covered, or you want to go into more of the?
Yeah, what I will say about some of the themes in Quixote, and I will say this about my character, which is consistent with with Cervantes's Don Quixote, and that's that he's a dangerous man. He's a dangerous man who is not well, and he does things that are funny, that are enchanting and charming, but ultimately are quite dangerous. It's especially if you give him a weapon. If you give him a lance and a sword, he can be very dangerous. And in today's culture, if he weren't a student of Cervantes, he might have had a gun, and then he could have done some real serious damage. But they're looking for him. His own family is looking for him. The barber the barber in Cervantes' novel, it becomes a psychologist, his therapist, who has been treating him and giving him medication. And that's how the barber functioned in those days. The barber function was a bleeder with leeches, used leeches. The barber's bowl wasn't just to cut hair; it was actually to catch blood from leeches, because they were involved in bleeding. He was the equivalent of the doctor in that period. And then the other person is a priest, So he's got someone from the medical world and someone from spiritual world involved with the spiritual world, the life of the soul, who are trying to get to him and help him. And they're ineffective. They can't do it. They can't catch him. They can't make him see reason. Um, and uh, and so so I want to emphasize that about Quixote. He's a dangerous character, and it's fun to see him go through these crazy things these adventures and exploits. But he kills sheep. He kills another person's herd. He gets the tar beat out of him several times, beaten hard, horrible. Uh, he takes what he thinks is this potion and it makes him vomit and it makes him go to the bathroom a lot. He's and he puts Sancho through hell, and Sancho's just trying to, my Sancho anyway. He's just trying to make sure he stays out of trouble and trying to coax him back home. And by the end, there's a part of him that really deeply believes in him, believes in his quest, because we all have our dreams of a quest like that. It's just that he's doing it with half a mind, with his memory fading, and with very little else to help him in an age that no longer believes in chivalry. In fact, at the time that this novel was written, they didn't believe in chivalry either. The knights were like, the whole world of the knights was at least 400 years old. It was gone. It was a fantasy. And now it's like, even further gone now, although you wouldn't know it with all the sword and sorcery stuff that's out there. When Cervantes wrote this novel, he really wanted to lampoon and make fun of all those people that were reading all those romances, those knight and shining armor romances and dragon slaying and magicians and magic and giants and trolls and ogres. He just thought that was all bunk, that they should read about real life, about the real world. So he wrote this novel about a guy who really falls for that, and how he confronts the real world, how that it clashes when he tries to, attack dragons, and it's like, someone's ox, or sees an entire army when it's just a herd of sheep, and he engages them in battle. It's just he's trying to show them how ridiculous it is to fall for those fantasies. He wrote this in rebellion of that, in a revolt. Well, the same thing continues today. You go look at Dungeons and Dragons, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Robin Hood, all those movies and TV shows that have to deal with sword and sorcery, all that magic stuff. It's still going on. It's still very vital. It still really attracts the imagination. And so I feel like the novel is even more relevant than it was then. And in some respects, I think my play is too. So anyway, that's it. I feel like I've come full circle with this work, because Man of the Flesh started there, and it dealt with Day of the Dead and the skeleton world, and Mama Kalaka, who was the mother of death, the mother as death, as a symbol of death. And there were all these skeletons. Well, I'm back to that world again, except this time it's from the father point of view. It's Papa Kalaka. So it's really weird how I've come full circle with the Day of the Dead themes in this work as well. Really, really interesting to me how it circled here.
Very important question. What do you want the audience to get out of your play?
I never, I can't ever predict what the audience is going to get out of it. I don't even know what I want the audience to get out of it. I just want them to come. I never, when I write the plays, I'm not thinking of the audience. I'm thinking of the story. And they'll get what they get out of it. and I hope it's entertaining and thought provoking, and what else can one ask out of an audience, except that just everyone's going to respond differently. It's there's no like I have no imperatives that way. I don't really, they're going to respond how they respond, and as long as it's honest, it's valid. So that's what I'll say. I think they need to attend this play, and they need to support the theater. Theaters across the country are in real trouble. They have been since the pandemic, and there's been many casualties. So many small and mid-sized theaters have gone under in the years during and after the pandemic, and people seem to have fallen out of the habit of going to the theater. And whenever there's a work of original theater that is thought-provoking, whether it's from me or any other writer, whether the work is new or old, they need to come and support it. They need to come and stand by their theater like they stood before. They need to support it and develop it. So it's important. It's an important community center. It's an art center. And it needs to be supported. They all do. All theaters need to be supported, and the only way really you can support is by donating to the theater and coming to see the work, and talking it up, and bringing guests as quickly as possible. You just need to get people to come to the theater. I've never seen theater undergo such a crisis as I have in the last few years, and I've been fighting for my local theater here, the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, for the last 2 years, and every day it's another day in this continuing battle to save our companies. If we lose them, it'll be a tremendous loss that will be hard to measure. An immeasurable loss. And let me just put it that way: it'll be an immeasurable loss. So I really encourage everyone they have to come. They have to come see Quixote Nuevo. They have to come see every show in the season. It's vital. My name is Octavio Solis, and I'm the playwright of Quixote Nuevo. So please, I urge you all to come and support our company, our theater, and this story, and as it provides this wonderful, rich Latino view of Quixote Nuevo. Please come and support it.
Thank you for listening or watching this podcast episode of Stage Explorations. To learn more about the theater creative and more theater creatives and artists on Stage Explorations, go to www.stageexplorations.com. Once again, that is www.stageexplorations.com. There is no space between stage and explorations. You may find more videos, podcasts, and information about this theater creative and other theater creatives and artists on Stage Explorations YouTube channel. Looking forward to seeing you in the theater.